I'm glad we agree on that when it comes to writing, and I'm glad to hear that you're writing, because I know that's a very difficult, avenue, right? But we always talk about this, and that writing is the most important thing you need. Sound is after, but writing the story. I still remember when I was at Toronto International Film Festival, I was doing those Q&As, and someone raised their hand, roughly our age, and said, "Hey, I just like to know, like, what does it take to be a filmmaker, like, or a director at the very least? Like, what can I do?" And he says, "Are you listening?" And he goes, "You need to learn how to write a story." And everyone's looking at you like, "What?" We were expecting like you pick up a camera, get buddy with the editor. I don't know. And the fact that he said that, he said, if you look at any great filmmaker, they know how a story is constructed, they know how to construct one themselves, and they know how to execute it.
Well, that's such a great point, dude.
Right.
Because I'm huge. Like I would consider myself in general not a talented writer. So
Right.
all my writing comes from like thoroughly structuring out what I'm going to do before I start.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like outlining, figuring out, the whole structure of my film, from, figuring out all the acts, breaking them down, like with, 3-act structure, whatever you're doing, 5-act structure, like figuring out exactly structurally how your film goes together.
Absolutely.
And getting that on paper before you start on that blank page is so important for me. And I spend a lot of time doing that. My room is sort of like a conspiracy theorist's room. It's got big like boards with,
with
like
the red lines or with the yarn and all that
lines, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like,
I love that. You get down in there, you get in there, and that's what you got to do.
The job, man. It's
It's part of the job, man. You don't mind getting your fingers dirty, and that's what it takes, right? And I'm glad you said that, because you see, you don't have to be an Aaron Sorkin, right? You don't have to be a Tarantino on the level of writing, but the fact that you took an interest, or you dedicated yourself enough to learn how to construct a story, again, how to tackle a story, when it comes to being on another position on set, you're familiar, that you're just aware of what makes a good movie. And I feel like there's a lot of movies now today, the reason why people forget, they think it's CGI, they think it's, a bad director, but what they don't realize is that it all starts from the story. I'm not blaming the script writer. I'm talking about the story, like the essence, the core. The reason why Star Wars resonates with me and is in my heart and resonates with so many millions of people is because, yes, the movies have their problems. Yes, fans don't agree, but the story is there. And whether you agree or disagree, you even said it, right? You're not the biggest Star Wars fan, but there's a story to it. There's something to it that everyone kind of goes back to. I always bring up the Star Wars Episode 3, right? It has a lot of problems. A lot of filmmakers will say, "How could you like that?" But for me, there's a story there. Like, I like the idea that there was tragedy. There's that the fall to the dark side, and the whole movie just felt like really depressing in a way, like the tone of it. And again, there's lines where you might cringe. There's lines where you might smirk, but the essence, the story behind it, the fact that the fall from grace, is something that touches me in a different way, inspires me in a different way. So I guess when we're talking about all these tips and how to stay creative and all our creative projects, what kind of advice would you give, like, filmmakers out there, man, like us, just kind of struggling, or maybe, finding some issues, getting, keeping their head up?
Yeah, I mean, I find the biggest thing is, like, it's about figuring out where you want to be at the end. That's the big thing for me, is like really figuring out where I want to be when this is over.
Right.
Like, I find like a visualization and really trying to understand, like, and get a thorough understanding of where you would like to be at the end of the pandemic is like one of the biggest and most important things for me. Because if you know that, then you can sort of take that and work your way backwards and get, okay, I want to have directed one short film, by the end of the pandemic. Okay. Right. I have these resources. Then you can work your way back and go, okay, what needs to happen today is this in order to execute my goal. And I can get creative with that, leading, to my ultimate goal at the end of the process. Right.
Right.
So I find like the big thing, like, is trying to figure out, like, clearly define what your goals are, and then working your way back so you can take sort of tangible steps towards them and be creative every single day and know what you're being creative for. So you have sort of purpose, right?
Yeah. And would you say you visualize? Is there a lot of visualization in your goals? Like, do you actually picture yourself there? Because that's a big thing for me. I actually imagine myself like you said, like directing a short film before the end of the year. Like I picture me on set working with the people that, are interested, connecting. Would you say, yeah?
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
mean, I think
absolutely.
visualization is so essential. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
once you establish that visual in your mind, and
Right.
I think this is similar for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
once you sort of establish that and you become really clear on what you're trying to do, the universe will get out of your way. If you start taking steps towards that, things will start to happen and you'll start to move. It might not
Right.
be the pace or how you expect it to happen, but you'll start moving in that direction. If you know what that direction is and you start taking tangible steps towards it, you're slowly making your way there. And I feel like that's so important.
Yeah, the hardest step for me, I always tell people, is showing up. And I'm sure you can agree, is people say, well, that's easy, but it's not in a way. And when I say showing up, I don't even mean physically, I mean mentally. Like when you have to write a script, for instance, you make it in your schedule that at 8 o'clock I will wake up and, sit myself in the chair and open the laptop and start. A lot of people will put it off and say, no, 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 I'm going to do it later, or I'm not feeling it today. But in your heart you're just scared, right? And it's normal to be scared. And I've gone through a lot of fear. I've yet to experience more fear, right? Depending on new obstacles, new challenges that I encounter. And you could say the same for yourself, right? There's always going to be changing tides, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's important, yeah, to for sure, like to definitely visualize and to set goals and to kind of imagine where you want to be for sure at the end of the pandemic. I really like that point, and that's something that, again, that resonates with me a lot. I've this is an important time, but it's also a critical time for a lot of people to take advantage of the fact that we have that downtime, we have that quiet time to do self-reflection.
Absolutely.
Um, and again, as a creative, it's the best time. Like this is the time when you just catch up on all those creative projects you want to do, or just like you said, bang out a script if you have to. Um, do you find days where you're maybe discouraged, or you know
Oh, yeah. Are you
doesn't, yeah,
kidding me?
right, yeah.
It's the worst. Like how regimented would you say you are in your like day? Is it like is are like you get up at a certain time and get going and you have this and this, or is it sort of like I get up, and I'll sort of get going and you sort of feel out the days as they come? Like how regimented are you in your approach?
So I'm glad you asked that. I have a pretty regimented time schedule, and that's because I create one for myself because I like to stay organized. But it's very it always has the basics and then filled in with things that I really want to do, if that makes sense. So even if it's like a crappy day, or a day like I don't want to do anything the next day, kind of like I don't really have anything in mind, or nothing's really happening, especially with the pandemic. It's always like the essentials: exercise, read, meditate, draw, like like do something creative. And that's pretty much it. Now that's like a very basic day. Like there's just nothing going on, but I always do those things. As I explain in my vlogs, it's very important to have a morning routine, or a routine in general. Very, very important to have some sort of structure.
Right.
I don't care, creatives, they try to use that excuse like, oh, I don't need structure in my life. But you do. You're a human being. And, especially when you grow up, you're an adult, you're a man or woman, and you need to have that structure. You need to have some sort of accountability, or else nothing will get done. And I found that it's discipline, right? At the end of the day. But yeah, I'm not a robot. There are days when, I do those things. Maybe I
Right.
even half-ass the exercise. Maybe I even skip it altogether. I'll let you guys know. But for the most part, I like the idea that I have some sort of, schedule that I look to, right? It keeps me sane, especially in a time when, like you said, you can easily just wake up and do whatever you want. Or when I was talking about binging Netflix for 2 months, it's very tempting. There are days, I want to talk to you, about the Queen's Gambit soon. That's something that I did. I just said, I'm hooked on the show. Like that's when it's a good show. You just got to binge watch it.
Gotta love
I want
things,
to know
man.
your thoughts. Back to the scheduling. Like, do you have the same vibe? Like, is it structured, or are you just kind of like off the cuff?
Yeah, when I'm in my most productive state, it's incredibly regimented and
Okay,
structured.
perfect. Right.
You'll notice as you brought up, do you have off days? Do you have like those days? Yep, and those are the days that there's no structure.
Yep.
But when the structure's there, that's when I feel at my best and the most productive, and when I really do achieve sort of what I'm
Hmm.
looking for.
That's great, man. Yeah, I'm glad you agree also that, you know, as an artist, creative, whatever have you, you need that structure, you need that organization.